The year was 2004, or maybe 5. It was a Sunday night. I'd wandered down to my local video store, intending on buying a DVD to give myself one last bit of pleasure before I was due to get up for work on Monday morning. And once I was there, I drifted into the video game section and I found a game called Project Zero for the PS2. Yes, we're going that far back. And this game, I'd never heard of it in my life, but it looked kind of cool. It was clearly about ghosts or something. So I decided to part with £15 of my hard-earned cash and get this game. And I went home, played it, really enjoyed it. And that began a lifelong appreciation of what is, in my view, one of the most undervalued horror gaming franchises there has ever been. Because Project Zero, or Fatal Frame, as it's known in America, is absolutely frigging awesome. And I just found out a couple of weeks ago that there is a movie about Project Zero. Who would have thought it? I mean, it came out in 2014. How the hell has 10 whole years managed to go by and I've never heard that this movie exists? I mean, this movie was basically made for me. Just ridiculous. To be frank, it's not like I've spent every night of the past 20 years playing Project Zero. I have drifted in and out of the franchise over the years. I'm not some kind of super fan. I've not even played all of the games. There are 5 of them, and I've personally played 3. The 2 I particularly love are the first 2. They are absolute classics of the horror genre. If you don't know what Project Zero is all about, it's fundamentally a supernatural horror franchise. It's about ghosts, mainly. Each game usually features a young woman. It's often a different woman each time. A young woman or a teenage girl going through a dark mansion at night or a deserted island. She's armed only with a camera, and there are ghosts. Some of them will be friendly. You can take pictures of those ghosts and earn yourself points to try and get upgrades. But some of the ghosts are hostile and they'll attack you. And when they do, you've then got to try and kill them with your camera flash. It sounds absolutely awful, but believe me, it's actually really awesome. Now, I personally get more satisfaction out of from killing ghosts on Project Zero with a camera than I do killing zombies with a rocket launcher as Claire Redfield on Resident Evil. But that's just me. It just depends what kind of person you are. If you're the sort of horror fan who's more into the atmosphere and the chills, Project Zero might be for you. On the other hand, if you like having loads of different type of guns and testing them out on zombies and zombie dogs and what have you, and demented creatures, then maybe Resident Evil's for you. If you're more of an action horror fan, maybe Resi's going to be more for you. But I'm somebody who likes both franchises. I like a lot of different horror franchises, both the gaming world and the film world. But in a discussion like this, I kind of feel like I have to plant my flag more towards the Project Zero side, just because it's the underdog in this sort of conversation. This Project Zero movie, or Fatal Frame movie, if you like, it's a little bit different from the games. When I put it on at first, I thought to myself, okay, well, it might be a Fatal Frame movie, but it's very different from the games. And I guess the main reason for that is that most of it takes place in daylight, which immediately makes it very, very different. The isolation from the games has gone as well. We're not just focusing on one character in the movie. There's loads of characters all over the place, seemingly, because the film takes place in a Japanese orphanage. Now, these sorts of places don't exist in the UK. I don't mean orphanages. I mean orphanages that are also half high school, because seemingly in this place, in the movie, kids go to this orphanage at a very young age, but then they can stay there, and the orphanage kind of functions as a high school as well, which I found to be a weird concept. But this is where the movie takes place. So when the story begins, we've got a young girl, I guess she's about 15, 16, and she's locked herself away in her dormitory room for about 7 days. Everybody knows she's alive in there, but nobody knows why she suddenly shut herself away. And it turns out that there's a spirit loose in the orphanage. And there's also a curse in the air whereby if people kiss this photograph of a girl, then they will die. And the plot kind of goes on for there. It's quite convoluted. It's been a couple of nights since I watched it, and my brain's already starting to forget a lot of the details of the plot. But it's very, very good. Albeit, when you start watching it, it doesn't feel like you're watching a Project Zero film. But the more I got into it, the more it did start to feel like that. You know, it doesn't look and taste like a Project Zero film maybe, but after a while you sort of spot little things from the games and you think, oh, that's just like from the games, and then you think, oh, that element of the plot, that was right out of Project Zero too, and all these start to build up, and after about an hour you think, yeah, this is totally a Project Zero film. I really, really dig it. But that's not to say that the more like the games a film like this is, the better it will be. If you look at the history of horror video games that have been made into films, it's not the case that the more like the games they are, the better they are. If you look at the film Doom, for instance, I love the classic Doom games, but they brought out this Doom movie and they did try and make it like the games, and it just didn't work. There was the whole first-person perspective sequence in there where the Doom guy's going up the stairs and you're following it through his eyes, and it's meant to ape the games, but it's just not the same watching it on the movie screen. But at the same time, if you deviate too far away from the games, that doesn't work either. I still look back on the 2001 Tomb Raider film with the absolute horror, because it was just so unlike the games that I grew up with. It was horrible. Project Zero, or Fatal Frame as it's called, damn Americans, it goes for a kind of mixture, I guess. It like I said, it doesn't look like a Fatal Frame game at first, but when you get into it, that's when you realise that they have tried to sort of find the right balance between going all out adaptation and doing its own thing. I think Resident Evil has kind of gone for a mixture for the most part. You know, there have been times throughout the numerous Resident Evil films where I've thought, yeah, they're really going for to be like the games in this one. Then there's been other ones where I've thought, yeah, they've drifted off and done their own thing. But yeah, Fatal Frame, it's gone for the mixture, and I think it absolutely works in this case. The scares in this movie will appeal to people who are maybe a little bit fatigued of the whole American jump scare culture. If you watch things like Insidious and The Conjuring, you will get used to a certain type of scare whereby suddenly something will happen that you totally didn't expect, but it'll be accompanied by a big booming sound effect and you'll be rocketed out of your seat almost. I personally like that type of scare, especially if I've gone to the cinema to see a horror film, but not everybody does. This film kind of does the opposite to something like The Conjuring. All the horror feels very fluid and matter of fact. There's no great sound effects accompanying the things that might scare you. You know, like somebody will just randomly pick up a camera, look through it, and they'll see somebody looking back across the street, like, and you're not sure if it's an apparition or just some random on the street, but there's no big sound effect or music to go along with it, so it'll just be kind of creepy and unsettling. And similarly, somebody sat in a classroom seat and they'll look round and like an apparition will just go past, but again, no noise or fanfare. It'll just kind of happen naturally as part of the scene, and you can either be creeped out by it or not. And I think this film kind of gets under your skin in that way, just by the fact that it doesn't fully, you know, advertise its own scares almost. It just tells its story. It does its own thing, and it lets you be creeped out by the story. It's not putting in those artificial scares at, you know, every 5 minutes or so. There's a very obvious lesbian theme to this movie. So we find out that the original curse, and this isn't a spoiler because I think you get it in the first half, the curse was started by a couple of girls who were seeing each other, but they didn't want to come out, so they formed a suicide pact, but the suicide pact went badly wrong, and that's as far as I'm going to take that. I'll let you discover the rest of it for yourself. But we don't just get these long dead characters who were lesbians. That would have been very easy for a movie to do. You know, imagine if the writer of a movie just thought to himself, well, we've got to have some lesbian inclusion or gay inclusion. Oh, I know, we'll just have that dead character from 50 years ago be the lesbian, and that way we don't have to have any of the main characters being lesbian. No, we not only get long deceased characters being lesbian, but some of the main characters in the orphanage are, if they don't outright come out and say that they are gay, it's sort of implied that several of them are either gay or bisexual, and it just kind of comes out in the things that they say and the way that they act. One character is very, very overt in terms of her attraction to another student, and some of the other characters are kind of similar. There's just quite a few of them in this movie, and they just happen to be investigating a curse that involves other girls who were gay from the past. So it's quite a deliberate thing in this movie. It's all taken very seriously, but I think that's a good thing. I mean, these are teenage girls growing up and realizing possibly that they might be gay. So of course, they're going to take that kind of thing very, very seriously. I seem to have seen a lot of lesbian horror recently, not by choice. I just keep stumbling across it. Like I watched the Karnstein films as part of the Hammer franchise, which are full of like lesbian vampires and stuff. That's more of a fun fantasy sort of look at characters or vampires who may be gay. And I've seen more serious horror films with lesbians in them, like The Retreat, this film I saw recently about this gay couple, these two women who went to stay in a lodge, and then they were hounded by these horrible people who wanted to torture them and kill them and put the footage on the dark web. Fatal Frame is also on the more serious side of being almost like an LGBT type horror film, but I think it handles all of its themes very well. The games didn't really have that. The games were more about sisterhood and family lineage, family trees kind of a thing. So this is another thing that's just, they're going for something slightly different with the movie. They've been very bold with what they've chosen to go different with. You know, the daylight dark aspect being the most notable, but also, and I'm very grateful for this, they don't have anybody in this film actually going around with a camera shooting people with ghosts. We don't see ghosts go, ah! You know, when somebody fires a flash at them. I think that could have ended up with a bit of a doom scenario. So very glad that they avoided that. I think generally they've made very, very good choices in the Fatal Frame movie with what to not include from the games, and just very good choices of what they have decided to include, which usually is just a few little nods to certain storylines. There's definitely a scene in this movie where we realise that 5 girls have died in a certain time frame, and this, for me, just brings back memories of, I'm sure there's one of the games that involves like 5 sisters or 5 something or other, but just little things like that. If you've played the games, you'll notice lots of different things from the various storylines, but all the main things they could have included, they've really taken some bold decisions with not including them. This film's official title is Gokijiban Zero, and I guess that's probably why I'd gone 10 years without noticing the existence of it. It's never had a Western release, this film. I highly doubt it's ever been on the likes of Netflix or Shudder or Amazon Prime. It's not available to buy on DVD or Blu-ray to my knowledge. I watched it on YouTube. You can watch it on there for free, so just go for it if you fancy it, and the picture quality is pretty decent. If you watch it on a big, large screen, there is a little bit of kind of a tiny little bit of blur at times. But I've noticed that happens on a lot of YouTube videos when you put them on your big, large TV screens. But it's still easy to watch this. I'd say it's DVD quality, what you're watching with this. But that's absolutely fine. In terms of the performances within the movie from the actors, very, very strong across the board. I'd never heard of anybody in this film. They're all Japanese actresses. They're all speaking in Japanese, so we have the subtitles, but I'd much rather that than some really crappy dubbing, I've got to say. I will single out one particular actress I thought was very strong. Her name is Ayami Nakajo. She plays, I forget her name, but she plays the girl who begins the film locked in her room, and she becomes a central part of the whole mystery, but she's very good in this. I did laugh at her filmography, though. I looked up what films she's done in the past, and this doesn't just apply to this actress. This applies to other Japanese actors and actresses. If they're the sort of people who have spent a lot of their careers only being in Japanese and Asian films, you'll notice that they will tend to appear in a lot of things with very funny names. I don't know why. So this actress's filmography, for example, I wrote down some of the things she's been in. So she's been in a few TV shows and films with names like this: Miss Double-Faced Teacher, Summer Nude, Nurse in Action, I Had a Dream of That Girl, Let's Go Jets, How to Identify the Right Bus. That is apparently the name of a film. So yeah, So funny. And I went through other members of the cast, and you see some funny names of things in there as well. But really good actress, though. And I'm not knocking the Japanese. They know their horror inside out. I mean, you can find some really great J-horror films. This is another one of them. I've actually even got some more praise for this film before I wrap up. So soundtrack is pretty strong as well. There's like this piano thing that plays every now and again in this. Very much like the tune from Suspiria. I feel like whoever wrote the tune in this film might have started out with the Suspiria song and just changed a few bars around to make their own sort of different version of that. But that's not a bad thing. I really liked the music in this. And some good locations in this as well. The orphanage looks fantastic. And outdoors, they've got this one spot which they've used for several scenes where characters will just be having little meetings or certain scenes. But in the background, there's like this town. So the scene will be playing out on top of like a cliff, and behind them you can see like this town full of white buildings, and it looks really cool. And we come to this same spot 3 or 4 times throughout the movie, but really good stuff. In terms of negatives, I don't really have a whole lot. The first 5 or 10 minutes is a little bit awkward to follow when you're so used to watching American and English films where you're kind of spoon-fed everything in the first 5 or 10 minutes really clearly. This film, not quite as skilled as that. I really had to kind of peer forwards and pay attention even more than normal the first 5 or 10 minutes just to fully get into the film. But once I was in, I wasn't going to come back out again. The other thing I'll say is there is a big part of me that did want that isolated, proper Project Zero experience, the isolation, the darkness, but maybe that'll come again in the future if they ever make another one of these. I don't know if they will. It's not like this franchise is a cash cow. They haven't made a Project Zero game since 2014 now. They occasionally remaster one of the older ones, but they've not made a new one for 10 years. This movie is 10 years old. I typed it in on Google, Fatal Frame movies, to see if I could find any news, if anything's ongoing or whatever. I did find a news article from 4 years ago which said that Christoph Gans, the Silent Hill director, is wanting to make another Fatal Frame movie, but given the fact that was 4 years ago, I would say that concept has probably hit the back burners. But whatever, we have this movie. Check it out because it's damn decent. That just about wraps it up for me on this, I think. Before I go, I will quickly go to the Bag of Terror so I can show you what score I'm going to give this film. Normally at this point of the review I'd show you the version of the film that I own, but like I said, I watched this on YouTube. I don't actually own a copy of it. So let's get to that score. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 bloody axes out of 5. A damn fine movie, and I encourage you to check it out whether you have played a Project Zero game in the past or not. Right, I'll leave it there for today. I definitely think this film has put me in the mood for watching more J-horror films this year. I've already bought a box set of Ring films, and I might even check out some of the Grudge films this year, I think. I think I'm going to check out some of the Japanese franchises that in the past I've only kind of skimmed the surface off. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to some variety this year. Right, we'll leave it there for today. Until next time, cheerio, bye-bye.